life. Dive into history's hidden chapters and uncover the voices of the past. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube Tale Trekker for more fascinating tales.
All right, strap in, because today we're going deep on some pretty incredible World War II stories, escapes, but not the ones you might immediately think of.
Oh yeah, some real ingenuity at play in these ones.
We're talking about Michael James Casey and Rolf Magener, and we're going to use their Wikipedia pages as our guide for this deep dive.
Should be fun, full of daring and twists you won't see coming, I bet.
First up, Michael James Casey. Now, this guy, even before the war, was quite the adventurer.
Really?
Yeah, top athlete, boxing, rugby, cricket, you name it. He even went to some really prestigious boarding schools like Clongowes Wood College and Stonyhurst College.
Fancy. Sounds like he had a pretty privileged upbringing.
He did, but it was the sky that really called to him.
So he was pilot.
Yep. Joined the Royal Air Force in 1936, started out with Hawker Hind bombers, and later flew Bristol Blenheims.
Those Blenheims, they were pretty crucial in the early days of the war, weren't they?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And right before things really got intense, he married Marjorie, the sister of a friend.
Whirlwind romance.
Yeah, you could say that sadly, though, their newlywed bliss was cut short just weeks after war was declared. Casey was shot down over Germany.
Oh, wow. So he ends up a prisoner of war.
He does.
Huh.
Ends up in Stalag Luft III, a camp notorious for holding Allied airmen. And it's here that we start to see the resourcefulness of these prisoners. They used a tactic called, get this, ghosting.
Ghosting? What's that? Like disappearing from the camp?
Kind of. They'd essentially vanish within the camp itself to disrupt routines and force the Germans to waste resources searching for them outside.
So not actually escaping, but creating the illusion of it.
Exactly. Clever way to tie up enemy resources, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's almost like this early experience with escape attempts foreshadows Casey's later involvement in the Great Escape, the most famous POW breakout of the war.
Of course, the Great Escape from Stalag Luft III. But Casey wasn't just swinging a pickaxe in this operation, was he?
Oh, no. He had a much more vital role. He was managing finances, forging documents, even creating secret hiding places within the camp, all essential stuff for the escape's success.
Wow, so he was a key organizer.
Absolutely, and it's important to note that out of the hundreds involved, Casey was one of only a handful who actually made it OUT of the tunnel, not just involved in digging it.
So he navigated that claustrophobic tunnel and emerged into, enemy territory. What happened next?
Well, according to his Wikipedia entry, he disguised himself as a foreign worker. Pretty risky move.
Incredibly risky. I mean, talk about blending in.
Right. He even had a close call with authorities in Görlitz, a city in eastern Germany. But unfortunately, luck wasn't on his side forever. Casey was among those recaptured.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and tragically executed by the Gestapo under direct orders from Hitler.
That's heartbreaking. To think of the courage and the sacrifices these men made for freedom.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about how escape doesn't always equal survival, especially in those times. But now, let's shift gears a bit. We've got another escape story for you, and this one takes place in a completely different part of the war. India.
Yes. Our second escape artist, Rolf Magener. So when the war breaks out, Magener, a German businessman working in India, suddenly finds himself classified as an enemy alien and interned by the British.
Magener's background is pretty fascinating, actually. Born in Odessa, educated in Germany, he was fluent in English thanks to time spent studying in Exeter, and he was well-traveled in Southeast Asia.
A real citizen of the world, it sounds like.
You could say that.
So he's a prisoner in a camp near the Himalayas.
Yeah.
Not exactly the setting you'd expect a daring escape to unfold, right?
Not quite. But here's the thing. He wasn't alone in his desire for freedom. He ends up interned with none other than Heinrich Harrer.
Wait, Heinrich Harrer, the mountaineer who wrote 7 Years in Tibet.
The one and only. Together they hatch a plan, as audacious as it is unexpected.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. What do these two cook up?
Their plan? Escape from the camp and trek across India, disguised as British officers.
Hold on, you're telling me they plan to impersonate the very people who imprisoned them?
You got it. Talk about bold.
Bold is an understatement. But did they actually manage to pull off this elaborate charade?
Their journey is like something out of a movie. They traveled over 1,500 miles by train, even shared meals with real British officers, all while maintaining their disguises.
They were eating with the enemy. That's a level of composure under pressure I can't even imagine. How did they keep up the act for so long?
It took incredible attention to detail, from their uniforms to their mannerisms, constantly observing, constantly adapting to avoid suspicion.
It's like they were living a double life, always on edge, every interaction a potential risk. So did they eventually make it out of India?
They did, but it was a journey full of close calls. In Calcutta, they had to switch disguises again, this time posing as Swiss businessmen. They continued their escape using river steamers and even a sampan.
So resourceful, wow. Where were they even headed? What was their ultimate goal?
Their aim was to reach Japanese-occupied territory. They figured they'd be treated as allies there. But their incredible journey takes a rather ironic turn when they finally reach Burma, exhausted and hungry, only to be captured by the Japanese.
Why, captured by their supposed allies? I thought they were trying to reach the Japanese.
They were, but the Japanese mistook them for spies due to their, well, everything, their journey, their multiple disguises. They were taken prisoner.
Oh, wow. What a twist. So did they end up spending the rest of the war in a Japanese prison camp?
Here's where the story takes another turn. They were eventually recognized as German nationals, and instead of imprisonment, were treated as, get this, honorary consuls in Tokyo.
Honorary consuls. From prisoners of war to honorary consuls. That's unbelievable. How on earth did that happen?
Seems Magener's charm and quick thinking came into play once again. He somehow convinced the Japanese authorities of their true identities and intentions.
So they basically talked their way out of captivity and into a somewhat comfortable existence for the rest of the war.
That's about the sum of it, yeah. It really speaks to Magener's adaptability, his ability to navigate, complex situations and seize opportunities, even amidst chaos.
Absolutely. So we have two incredible escape stories here, both defying expectations, both with danger and unexpected outcomes. One ends in tragedy, the other in a twist worthy of a spy novel. What connects these seemingly different experiences?
Well, I think one thing that jumps out is the resilience and adaptability both men showed. Faced with extraordinary circumstances, they found a way not only to survive, but to outsmart their captors.
It really makes you think about what success means in an escape attempt, doesn't it? Is it just about reaching a destination? Or is it more about the act of defiance, the courage and resourcefulness displayed along the way?
That's a great question, and one worth pondering as we delve deeper into these remarkable lives and the unexpected paths their escapes took.
Indeed. But for now, we need to take a short break. We'll be back soon to continue our exploration of these incredible World War II escapes. Welcome back to our deep dive into these remarkable World War II escapes. Before the break, we were talking about the incredible lengths both Michael James Casey and Rolf Magener went to prepare for their escapes.
Right, and those preparations went beyond just the physical stuff, like the tunnels and disguises and forged documents. They had to prepare mentally and emotionally too for the huge challenges ahead.
Yeah, to live a lie, constantly on edge, always fearing that you might get caught. That takes incredible mental fortitude. And in Casey's case, knowing that if he was caught, it could mean execution, I can't even imagine.
It's tough to even fathom, but amidst all that danger and uncertainty, both men showed remarkable adaptability, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Especially Magener.
Yeah.
He went from businessman to prisoner to escape to honorary consul. He was constantly reinventing himself, adapting to whatever his situation was.
It's like he was, playing this high-stakes game of improvisational theater, always ready to change his performance as the circumstances changed. And speaking of changing circumstances, let's go back to Casey's story for a bit. You mentioned earlier that his role in the Great Escape was more than just digging and hiding. He was one of the main organizers of the whole operation.
Yeah, and it's interesting how his earlier experience with that ghost tactic at Stalag Luft might have actually influenced how he approached the Great Escape.
Yeah, that's a good point. How those prisoners would just vanish during roll call, forcing the Germans to search outside the wire. Such a brilliant act of deception.
It really was, tying up those enemy resources and messing with the camp's routine.
Absolutely. And it really highlights the psychological element of these escapes. It wasn't just about brute force. It was about using strategy and smarts to outsmart the enemy.
So the ghost tactic, was that like a form of psychological warfare? Almost like a game of chess, with each move calculated to manipulate your opponent.
Exactly. And I think that experience really, really influenced Casey's understanding of misdirection and deception, which were, of course, so crucial to the success of the Great Escape. They weren't just digging a tunnel, they were creating a whole secret operation inside the Camp A, a whole network of tunnels and forgeries and disguises, escape routes.
It's incredible. Building a system for freedom, really. A true testament to their ingenuity and determination.
Isn't it? It really makes you wonder how they were able to pull off something so complex right under the noses of their captor.
And Casey's role in all of it, managing finances, forging documents, creating those secret hiding places, it really shows his organizational skills and how committed he was to the cause.
It does. It makes you think about what motivated him to take such big risks when he knew the consequences could be so severe. Was it simply the desire for freedom, or was there something more driving him?
It's hard to say for sure, but I'd imagine it was a combination of factors. The longing for freedom, the desire to strike back at the enemy, the sense of camaraderie with his fellow prisoners. Those are all pretty powerful motivators.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a reminder that these escapes weren't just individual acts of bravery, but collective efforts that required a huge amount of trust and coordination and a shared belief that freedom was actually possible.
Hundreds of men all working together, each one playing a role in this huge act of defiance. It's really quite something.
It is. And while not everyone made it out, their combined effort, that willingness to risk everything for a chance at freedom, that's incredible. It speaks to their spirit.
It does. It's a testament to the human will to survive, to resist oppression, even when the odds seem completely against you. Their stories really challenge our understanding of courage and resilience.
They do. And speaking of resilience, let's get back to Magener's amazing journey across India. We left off with him being captured by the Japanese, which is pretty ironic considering they were trying to reach Japanese-held territory.
Right. Seems like fate had something else in store for Magener and Hare. But as you said before, even being captured took an unexpected turn. They weren't thrown into a prison camp, were they?
Nope. Instead, they found themselves in a much more, diplomatic situation.
Diplomatic, that's one way to put it. They went from being suspected of being spies to being treated as honorary consuls in Tokyo. How did that happen?
Well, it seems that Magener, being the resourceful and, let's face it, charming guy that he was, used his quick thinking to once again get himself out of a sticky situation. He somehow managed to convince the Japanese authorities that they were who they said they were and that their intentions were good.
So they basically talked their way out of imprisonment and into a pretty comfortable life for the rest of the war.
That's pretty much it, yeah. It really shows how adaptable Magener was, His ability to navigate these complex situations and take advantage of opportunities, even in the middle of so much chaos.
Absolutely. And it also shows the power of communication, even when there's war and suspicion all around. It's fascinating how Magener's personality and skills played such a big role in shaping his destiny.
It is, yeah. And I think it also highlights the human element within these historical events. These aren't just stories of escape, they're stories about people with their own unique personalities and strengths and weaknesses, trying to make their way through incredibly complex and challenging circumstances.
It's a good reminder that history is made up of all these individual stories, each with its own twists and turns, triumphs and tragedies.
Exactly. And while the circumstances of their escapes were so different, both Casey and Magener represent a spirit of defiance, a refusal to give up hope, even when the odds were stacked against them.
Their stories make us really question what it means to be successful in an escape attempt, don't they? Is it simply about reaching a certain place? Or is it about something bigger, something more profound? Like the act of resistance itself, that unwavering belief that a better future is possible.
That's a question that's worth thinking about as we consider the larger implications of their stories, and it leads us to another interesting question. What makes a story really impactful? Is it the scale of the event, or is it the individual experiences, the human stories that make history come alive?
That's a great point. And it's something we'll continue to explore as we go further into these remarkable escapes. But for now, we need to take another short break. When we come back, we'll dive even deeper into the legacy of these men and the lasting power of their stories. Welcome back. We've been talking about the amazing escapes of Michael James Casey and Rolf Magener, two men who really defied the odds during World War II.
Their stories are so full of twists and turns, and they make us really think about what it means to escape successfully. Is it just about getting to a certain destination? Or is it more about that act of resistance, never giving up hope for a better future?
Yeah, their journeys were about so much more than just physically escaping. They were about the strength of the human spirit and that refusal to give in to despair. We've talked a lot about how carefully they planned and how adaptable they both were. But I'm curious, what do you think was the most important thing that helped them escape?
That's a really good question. Their circumstances were so different, but I think the one thing Casey and Magener both had was this unwavering sense of hope. They just never gave up on the possibility of being free, no matter what obstacles they faced.
That's a really powerful point. Hope can really keep you going when everything seems lost. And in both their stories, we see that hope, along with their planning and adaptability, help them to grab opportunities, figure out tough situations, and ultimately beat the odds.
Absolutely. They are real examples of how resilient and creative humans can be, how strong the will to survive is, even in the darkest times.
It makes you wonder how those experiences changed their lives after the war. Did they ever talk about their escapes?
There's information out there about what they did after the war, but not a lot about how they personally felt about their escapes, in detail. Sadly, we know Casey never got the chance to share his story. But Magener, he lived a long life after the war and worked for big companies like BASF and Mercedes-Benz.
It's interesting to think about those years after going through such incredible events. Did he carry those memories with him? Those skills he had to learn under such pressure. Did they influence his later life?
It's hard to say for sure, but it seems likely that those experiences had a deep impact on him, on how he saw the world and maybe even how he dealt with challenges later in life.
It reminds us that these weren't just isolated events. They were things that shaped who these men were, their perspectives, their whole beings. And those stories still resonate with us today. They give us insights into just how resilient humans can be and how powerful the human spirit is.
I agree. Their stories make us think about what we ourselves could achieve when we're facing tough times. They remind us that even when things seem really bad, hope can still exist, courage can win out, and the human spirit can find a way to triumph.
So true. As we wrap up our deep dive today, it's important to remember that these are just two stories out of so many cosms. History is full of untold tales of courage and resilience and the human will to survive.
You're absolutely right, and I think these stories should encourage us to seek out those untold tales, to learn from the past and find inspiration in what people have overcome.
Yeah, let their stories be a kind of call to action. Let them inspire us to dig deeper into history, to uncover those hidden stories, and find inspiration in the human spirit that never gives up, even when things seem impossible. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Whispers of the past in every page, stories lost but now engaged. From ancient lands to empire's might, we journey through the fading light. Unlock the mysteries, tales untold. The forgotten pages history unfolds with